Hi, everyone. This is the 50 States Highpointing podcast and YouTube channel. What started off as a project for a communications class has turned into something that I actually love doing. I have the privilege of providing the platform for people to talk about the extraordinary things they do in the outdoors. Highpointing is the challenge of reaching the highest elevation in each of the 50 states. Highpointers don't get paid for their hobby. No one is sponsored by an outdoor company, and people fit this challenge into their everyday lives that also include careers and family. I found through these interviews that people who attempt this challenge are incredible and genuinely enjoy talking about their experiences. If you consider yourself a highpointer and you want to share your story on this podcast or interview, please send me an email at 50stateshighpointingpodcast@gmail.com. It has been a pleasure speaking with every highpointer. I hope you enjoy. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 50 States Highpointing Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren, and today we're talking with Mike Sloan. He is the 8th father and son team to reach all of the 50 state high points, and he's also the author of this book, Bear Attacks, Dog Teams, and Sinking Boats. And so we're going to talk about his highpointing adventures with his son, and then we'll get a little bit into his life and his book. So, Mike, welcome.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was a pleasure to read your book and watch some videos of you on YouTube too. And you have a life that's full of obviously lessons and adventures too. So can you tell the listeners a little bit about how you got started highpointing and then when your son joined you?
Well, I grew up north of Seattle, and I started climbing in high school. And that was back in 69. And then I met a guy who, I got a job at REI in Seattle. And, I was climbing with this guy. He mentioned that there was some guy that did high points, and I don't remember who. It just kind of stuck with me. But I was an avid climber in high school, 69. I climbed Denali in 71 and on an expedition from the north side. We went in from the north, climbed Pioneer Ridge, North Peak, over the South Peak, down Carson's Ridge, and back out to Wonder Lake. It took us about 32 days.
And that's on the cover, isn't it? This is the...
Yeah, that's the North Peak right there, actually.
Yeah.
That's us going up the North Peak. And it was the first ascent all the way from the north to the south. And the reason being is, well, we were above 18,000 feet for 6 days. And carrying our loads over to North Peak, which is 19 and whatnot. So I don't think anybody... The one party that did that didn't want to go all the way. Anyway, we did that. That was a rude awakening to me for expedition climbing. And, I was just a weekend climber in Washington. We'd go do Rainier and, those kind of Cascade Mountains and leave on Friday, come back on Saturday. It was kind of like, 32 days on a mountain. You got to be kidding me, man. I was like just out of high school, and I knew what my friends were doing, and I guarantee it was a lot more fun than what I was doing for 30 days. But, it was a rude awakening, but it was one of the most pivotal points in my life, doing that mountain, because I learned a lot through that as far as character development and endurance, and pushed me to a limit. It was rugged. I mean, saw a climber die that was coming up as we were going down. He fell into a crevasse unroped, and I almost died. I fell into a crevasse, and anyway, it was a unique experience. And it really did set a lot of things for me as far as character. And from there, I just kept climbing, and of course, met my wife at REI. She worked at REI in Seattle also, and met her, and we soon moved up north of Mount Rainier, built a log cabin up in a little town called Greenwater, Washington, and I kind of quit climbing then, more or less. Then it was just something I didn't do. I was working in the woods then and stuff like that. But then, of course, we started having kids, and then we went to what did we do? We went to Canada, and then we went to Nepal. Went to a Bible college in Canada, and then we went to Nepal.
Yeah.
As the kids getting older and stuff like that. And of course, when we went to Nepal, that was back in 89, I suppose. And we lived in a village, a remote village in the Himalayas, and did community development work, water projects, health teaching, and all kinds of different midwifery teaching. Oh man, our village was a 4-day walk out and really remote. And so we would carry Daniel, who I did the high points with. At that time, he was 2 years old. And we would carry him on, have a Nepali porter carry him on a basket all the way out for 4 days. And I mean, they didn't have matches out there. The women didn't have mirrors. And we lived for 4 years. Nepal's my second home. I'm going back in April. And I've, as you know, done the Himalaya Trail from the east of Nepal to the west. And I love it. I can also speak the language and live that way. But so it's a good and a bad. But, it was an interesting thing for our kids. Our kids grew up there for 4 years in a village, and they were really changed by it, and I think the hardest time for them was when we came back to the States, and then we went to Wheaton, actually, college there, and it was really tough on our kids to have the reverse culture shock. But they did, they managed. And Daniel, by the way, the one I did the high points with, he probably had the hardest struggle because he was the youngest one when we went, and what helped him come out of that actually was going in the Marines.
Sure.
Now, we started the high points with Daniel 2002, and we were living in Missouri then, actually helping out in a church, and it was pretty central, so we could do that. And so I just started. I thought, you know what, I need a good father-son project to do with Daniel. And so I thought, why not the high points? So we started kind of going out and doing sections, as you know how you do. And so we started in 2002, and then had a period where he went in the Marines, and I had to wait for 4 years for him to get out. And we finished those up when he got out, and finished our high points up in 2015. And but what really helped him was his whole background, kind of coming to grips with it, and the high points and all that. When he went to the Marines, and the officers would look at him and they say, well, one time is when he came back from Iraq, his first tour, he went in the Marines. He went to a high altitude combat training course out of California.
I've heard of that. Yeah.
So he did that, and they climbed one of the 14,000ers or something towards their last days, and Daniel was helping guys packing their packs as we would do, because he'd been doing 50-mile hikes with me, and always did with kids, and his way he is. Well, anyway, the guy got to the top and said, man, congratulations, you guys. Not many guys get to the over 14 and stuff like that. And Daniel, I've been all over. I've been Rainier, Gannett Peak, all these, started racking off all these peaks. And the guy looked at him and says, how did you do all this stuff? And he says, my dad and I, we were climbing all the high points. And, well, the guy couldn't believe it that, number one, he had a dad that involved.
Sure.
And number two, that a dad would actually like doing that stuff with him. And this really it started him realizing how unique his life was, and living in Nepal. And then when he went in the Marines, they used him to talk to people about going to Thailand, because they're going to stop off in Thailand, because they found out that you lived in the Himalayas for what? Spent time in Thailand. We'd go to Thailand every year. Anyway, that really helped him gain an appreciation of his background. It really did.
So I read the chapter where you described your fall into a crevasse, and you actually provide a picture. Somebody outside must have taken a picture of just the black hole, and then they took a picture as you were getting out. Of course, reading it, I knew how it ends because you wrote the book. Yeah. You got out. I was kind of shocked when I read that you fell. I was kind of like, oh, I hope he's okay. Like, obviously you're okay because you wrote the book.
Well, even on Rainier, you worry about that a little bit. But the thing is, there's two types of mistakes, and that's one that changes you because you learn from it, and then what alters your life, And I learned from that deal. And the reason I fell in that crevasse is because Gary and I, we just got off Carson's Ridge, and we're on the Muldrow, and we're heading down to where we had cached stuff, 30 days before. And because Carson's Ridge comes down, is the ridge next to Pioneer Ridge that we went on. But
okay.
Anyway, we are on the snow, and it's July now, and it's hot and sloggy, and it's probably 2 a.m. I forget what it was. And he stopped, and I walked up to him, and and we talked, and then I took off to break trail, through the sloggy snow stuff. And anyway, the problem was he didn't have a tight rope on me. And so we had 120 feet of rope coiled, and I probably went 50 feet or something and broke through a crevasse and dropped straight free for 50 feet.
Wow.
And then, of course, the good thing about Gary is we were partners on the whole climb, and he was an ex-guide on Rainier, so he knew what he was doing. And I was in mountain rescue, and I used to be mountain rescue. I knew what I was doing. So although I made a bad mistake on that, I only had one Jumar on my harness, rope, which was stupid. And then, of course, it was stupid leaving coiled rope on me. All these little mistakes pile up. And anyway, I make a long story short, he got out, put a picket in, got out, trying to help me, lowered me a Jumar and all that stuff. Well, I got out finally after a couple hours, and of course the next day we're sitting at 10,000 feet under Muldrow at our igloo that we built 30 days before, and we saw a group of 4 climbers come up below us from Knowles National Outdoor Leadership School, and they were going to go up to Carson's Ridge when we went down, and they stopped 100 feet below us, made a circle, and then one guy took off his rope and snowshoes and took 3 steps and fell through a crevasse.
Yeah.
Unroped.
Yeah.
So we went down there, and Gary went in the crevasse, found him. Of course, he was dead, and we drug his body out, and geez, I would have given anything to helicopter off that thing.
Yeah.
And but anyway, we made it out. Rainier and all these kind of things, a lot of that stuff is training, and so we really, you kind of, I don't know, those kind of mountains and Gannett Peak in Wyoming, they're a little more where you take it a little more serious with your son and stuff. Mm-hmm. There's a little bit of risk in climbing, as you know, but
what route did you do on Mount Whitney?
Whitney, the regular route.
Okay.
Trail up Whitney.
Yeah.
We left it. Well, that's in the book too. We left at what was it, 11 or midnight or whatever it was, because we didn't get a lottery on that, so we had to do it in one day. And we left about midnight, and climbed all day. Got up there, it was rainy, snowy, and wet and cold. And then coming down, it was wet and cold. It's that part of that book.
Oh, the Death Valley. That's right.
Yeah,
that's
Death
right.
Valley.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Hey, I am the worst to go with. I'm always trying to cause trouble, but so we get down, we all day wet and cold, get off Whitney, and I had this van, and the kids, Daniel and his cousin, another one, they were in there sleeping and had all their fleeces on and sleeping bags, and they were cold and wet. And of course, I started the van, and we started on down. I said, well, hey, let's go to Death Valley, and that was only a couple hours from there, whatever it was. Oh, it was so funny. So we pulled into Death Valley, and those guys were still wrapped up and warm and sleeping, and pulled in 120 degrees in the shade or whatever it was.
Yeah. So
we got out and just let them sleep and just quietly got out. Man, it was in 2 minutes. They were just roasting in that thing. Just trying to get out of those stupid sleeping bags. They couldn't get the zippers undone. It was kind of funny, but
yeah, it's a good lesson. Well, isn't it? It's interesting that area between Death Valley and Mount Whitney. You can be in 120 degrees, and then you can be on the summit of Whitney and you're cold. But I think that area, it's called Furnace Creek, where they have where they post the temperature every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. 120 is typical for July out there.
Oh, unreal.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a fun mountain. It really was, but we had to go up one day kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times, as you know, you get to these high point parts and the gates close, but you're not going to drive again, so you just go out and at night go up and do the high point and come back down in the East Coast.
Yeah, that's right.
And you always meet these kind of things, but you just do them.
What was your favorite peak that you did with your son?
You know what? Probably Gannett in Wyoming.
Really?
I think Gannett was, number one is that 25-mile walk in or whatever, hike in, and the lakes are nice, and it's a real great wilderness area. And I think that was, that's our favorite country. I went back and did that twice.
Really? Wow.
Back there and did that one. Just really like that country.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else. I guess as far as the country you could enjoy because you're out there. Utah was fun too. I like Kings Peak, but yeah, I'd have to say Wyoming was probably our favorite. I like Rainier too, but I did that. I'd done that so many times that it wasn't a big deal for me. But
Really? Which routes did you do on Rainier?
you know what? I've done the north side from Sherman Pass up, or Camp Sherman up, and then I've done the regular Muir route, from that side of Cowlitz and stuff. And like I said, from the Camp Sherman side, we've done that. And this Squally Glacier did that one time. And
wow. Have you ever done a winter ascent?
You know what? We tried that on that, but didn't get very far. Never got. Well, not on Rainier, no.
So you did a winter ascent on Mount Hood, I read in your book.
Oh, yeah, that's about a killer deal.
Yeah, can you tell us about that?
Oh, geez. Well, I mean, we were working REI at the time, and we thought, let's go do it. So we went up to Hood in, I don't remember, January or whatever. Started up to clear day and got almost up to the crater. Man, we got hit by a whiteout so bad you couldn't see 5 feet, and the wind was just howling, and we're exposed. So we had to dig a snow cave that night, and so we had to dig in, and it was nasty, man. By the time we got into that thing, and our sleeping bags, you're wet. It's just a horrible night doing that. And next day we got out, poked the hole out. We had to get down, so we got out, and our wet clothes totally froze. So we were like wearing armor, and just sweating in the ice cave all night, or snow cave, and it was bad. You didn't want to lose sight of anybody, because if you'd have gotten lost in that whiteout, you'd never be, typical deal. You wouldn't be found. I know, because I was in mountain rescue. I used to go after guys like that. Notorious going from Hood down is a place to get lost. So is going from Camp Muir down in Rainier, a notorious place to get lost. In the whiteouts and stuff, And anyway, we ended up hitting the tree line, not really knowing where we were. It was hard. And we finally got to the tree line and kept going and didn't know where we were. And all of a sudden we heard a car on the road.
Yeah. So
we headed toward that sound and ended up getting on the road and then getting back to the car. And, that was bad, Yeah, we had some guy getting hypothermia on that deal. And anyway,
So when you went back with your son, did you climb in the summer?
Well, no, Hood, you got to be careful. We did it in the spring.
Okay.
It's the best time to do Hood because you go up that chute, up, what they call that Pearly Gates, whatever it is, man. We went up one time later in June, and we stood there and watched a huge rock come down that area. And, you got to do that a little bit early, So
okay.
I can't remember what time. So it would probably been May or June or May. I can't remember what, but it would have been earlier.
Can you tell us a memorable story from when you and your son were high pointing throughout the country?
Well, I'll tell you, the one that in the book, I'll quick kind of go through that. There's actually two of them. The other one isn't in the book.
Oh, okay.
This one is, and that's, we're driving, you know how high pointing is, you're driving all night, and I'm always driving. He was too young, and so I had to use the bathroom, and I stopped off at this military base or whatever it was in Louisiana, and they had a gift shop and museums and all that kind of stuff. So we stopped, and he's doing his looking around, and so I ran into the bathroom, and without reading the right sign, and I'm in there all by myself, and I thought it was kind of weird because there was only 2 stalls in the thing, no urinals, and that's kind of weird. But anyway, I was in one, and all of a sudden I realized all of a sudden I swear every tour bus must have stopped because that thing was full of ladies. I had gone into the ladies' bathroom, and I mean they were lined up, and oh man, and so they were patient at first, and then with one only available, it was getting probably frustrating for them. And I was trying to hide out in there and try to disappear, but I couldn't. And they started getting angry. He said, "What are you doing?" And come on, there's other people. Finally, just had to grin and bear it. And I just walked out. Man, their eyes, you should have seen their eyeballs when I walked out of that thing, that stall. It was like, anyway, I got out of there. I felt so bad.
I loved that chapter in the book because there are a lot of moments in the book where if I didn't know that you were alive because I contacted you before reading the book, I would wonder how someone would survive that. From sinking ships to bear attacks, canoes that almost went down waterfalls, and then, the crevasse fall. There are so many moments where, the reader is left kind of on edge. It really is a page turner. But then when I came to that chapter about going into the wrong bathroom, I thought, oh, okay, that's just funny.
Yeah. I'll tell you another event that happened, though. I did not in the book, but Daniel, we had just done, I can't remember which one, South Carolina or something, or maybe it was Virginia, but we were driving over the Appalachians. Well, coming down off that, we drove all night, did this. You drive up to it, we did it. When we drove down, I got gas at the bottom of the mountain, some little town, and I had my niece with me, and so it was Daniel and my niece, and well, anyway, I filled up with gas, got in, kept going. Of course, I got this van with the bench seats, and these young people crash immediately. You never see them. And I took off, and I drove for 3 hours over the Appalachian Mountains, over on the other side. And Daniel finally wakes up. He crawls up, and he says, "Hey, where's Gabby?" I said, "What are you talking about?" And Gabby's not here. Well, Gabby's a girl. She was a 16-year-old girl. Well, she'd gotten out to go to the bathroom at the gas station. I never knew it.
Oh, 3 hours away.
3 hours back there. She got out to go to the bathroom, and I just took off thinking they're still sleeping in this bench seats. I never see their heads anyway. Oh, I screeched the brakes. I said, "You got to be kidding." So I had to drive 3 hours back, pick her up, and then 3 hours to get back where we were, going to wherever. And she was calling. Because back then you had these cell phones that didn't hardly work, and she was calling everybody. They couldn't get a hold of me because I was in the Appalachians, whatever. And oh man, I was so mad. So I had like 9-hour day just driving that day. It was insane. So,
well, that's certainly memorable for you and all parties involved, really.
No, yeah.
Oh my gosh, what peak would you do again if you could?
Peak would I do again? Well, you know what? I still do a lot of. I've done Rainier again since, and I tell you the one I do again. Well, I do any of them again, but the one, well, most of all of them again, but closer ones. But I'd always love to do Wyoming again. That's just enjoyable, the country and all that stuff.
Yeah, I've heard.
I really like that one. I always take young people with me. I always have young groups with me, and so I'll do whatever they can handle,
Sure.
Too, and that kind of stuff they can. And yeah, it's fun. I really did enjoy Wyoming.
The beginning of your book, it opens up with a pretty fast-paced scene that you describe. It's a boat sinking.
Yeah.
And at the last second, things turned around and your boat was able to get back to safety. And you described throughout the book that was a moment that changed the course of your life because you then went into pastoral work and then you incorporated the outdoors into that work, both through the ministry that you did in Nepal and then here as well. So can you talk about how the outdoors was pivotal in what you were teaching?
Well, when I went to Wheaton, after, we had gone to Bible college, and then we went to Nepal 4 years, came back and went to Wheaton College, got my master's in education. That really transformed my whole view of education and how to become a better educator, you might say. And I started really thinking, how can I really see people develop? And I started thinking how people develop and how can you build character in people? And to me, that became so crucial. Like, I just don't want to teach. I want to develop a person. I want to develop their character so that they can persevere in life. They can persevere in the unknowns. And And kind of how my life's been. But I figured the outdoors was a good place to do that, because the outdoors, you can't control the outdoors. Nobody can. And so you have to be resilient. You have to learn how to cope. And you have to develop character to persevere through the 50-mile hikes or climbing a mountain or all that kind of stuff. That perseverance thing becomes so crucial, really, in life.
I agree.
And so I started doing that with the outdoors, taking 12-year-olds, 10-year-old, 12-year-olds on 50-mile hikes in the Cascades every summer. And I do father, son, daughter canoe trips in Canada and 8-day canoe trips. And up here I did the Yukon with them, because when we moved to Alaska, then I would do the Chilkoot hike down in Skagway to the interior. And then we do the Yukon canoe trips and things like that. I just really felt that, you know what, it's not good enough to, if I want to help develop a relationship between a father and a son and daughter, it's not going to be information. It's not going to be sitting down and lecturing. It's got to be something different. And so the experiential kind of learning came in with the outdoors, that, hey, if I put a father, son, and daughter together for 8 days in a canoe, you know what? They're really going to bond. And all this really started was with the revelation, you might say, if I can use that word, at Wheaton, when I was at Wheaton. Because at Wheaton College, when we were there, it's the suburbs of South Chicago, whatever, suburbs. And they have through Wheaton what they call the Prairie Path. And that Prairie Path is about 58 miles of restored trail. It's got 5 miles of trail, gravel trail. And then on each side, it's probably 10 feet of restored vegetation. And so they call it the Prairie Path, and you can walk for about 58 miles. And so my wife and I would walk it every night or whatever, And here's what happened. When I would meet somebody on that trail, you'd always say hi.
Yeah.
I realized, though, that if I was 10 feet over in the cul-de-sac, they wouldn't even look at me. What's the difference? It's this. You are sharing the identity of a unique experience. And that's why you, as a military person, have a bond with military people that's just there because of the unique experience. Or sewing clubs, or, I'm driving the lower 48 from Alaska, and I'll get people all the time coming up to my car. Hey, Washington State, Oregon, they'll, hey, I'm from Alaska or lived there, whatever, They would never say that if you say you're from Missouri, I guarantee it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also that unique experience is what, just, there's nothing like a bonding, unique experience is doing crime together. The gangs, but my thing was, how can I create that unique experience for dad, son, and daughter, or kids? And so I thought the outdoors, it's got to be something special. It can't be a Six Flags resort trip, or Seven Flags, what do they call that?
Yeah.
It's got to be something impactful that impacts their character and creates this unique experience that they can bond over. And so I started using the outdoors, and it did. You put a son and daughter, father, son, or daughter together for 8 days in a canoe, and they really have a unique experience, and they never forget it.
No.
And I've done a lot of funerals in my 40 years in ministry, and I guarantee it, what people talk about is always the experiences they remember with that person.
Yeah.
And anyway, make a long story short, that changed my philosophy of ministry, was Wheaton, when I realized that. So I came, back to church work, and I wanted to create that unique experience that they could identify with. And then I started it, really. And of course, the outdoors was that for me. I started in the outdoors when I was young. My uncle got me into hunting and fishing and skiing and all those kind of things. And my uncle changed my life. And I'll tell you, this is a little bit different, but let me tell you something. I've done a lot of men's retreats, where I just speak to men. And I will have them, these are 70-year-olds down to 40, 50-year-old men. I've talked to hundreds. And I'll have them do an exercise, because I talk about life stages and developmental stages and all that, and how to impact somebody in those stages. Because a 60-year-old is going through a different stage than a 12-year-old is. And so how can we help somebody through those stages? So I have them at these retreats list who made a difference in their life, one person, and what that was. And One sentence, what that was. And like for me, it was Uncle Ray, because he got me into outdoors, hunting, skiing, Boy Scout.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And I'll tell you what, 99% of the time, these guys have always listed, number one, a male, and number two, it was over an activity that impacted it in those junior high age years.
Okay.
Now, other ages might be different, but I'm just talking about the junior high, 12 to 16 years. And it was always a sports or an activity, and it was always a male, like a male soccer coach, a Boy Scout leader, or, and so it was interesting, because that to me, that's so truth-telling, and they did a study called Resilient Kids, where they studied this group of kids for about 15, 20 years, can't remember what, and they're saying social economic barrier, and they studied them, and they found that a certain amount of that group successfully transitioned into society, and then a large part didn't. And the only thing they found out, common denominator among the ones that transitioned successfully, was they all had, at some point, an older male mentor.
Okay.
And that's the only thing they could come up with. And what I found was that became crucial to me is how can I be impactful like that into these kids, 12, that a lot of them don't have dads.
Oh, yeah.
And how can I do that? And so I said, you know what? I'm going to build the outdoors into my ministry and use the outdoors to develop character and impact them as a person. And it's worked, because I go down to Washington from Alaska, because it got lousy summers up here. I go down to Washington in August and I do 50-mile hikes or beach hikes with those guys who were 12 and now are 45. And I'm doing hikes with their kids.
Wow.
So it's 3 generations doing hikes.
Wow.
I go purposely to Washington every summer and do that. And like next summer, we're going to do a 50-mile hike in Stevens Pass North.
Yeah.
And so it's been a lasting thing. But all that to say is that I use the outdoors to develop my philosophy of ministry, was just that. And I took kids from Missouri. We were there 5 years in a church, and I'd bring kids from Missouri out to Montana, out to Utah, out to Arizona, do all those things, high points. My son and I would go do the high point, and they'd stay in camp. But you know what? I was driving back east with a van load, always had van loads of kids, and we're driving back to Kansas City to drop 2 girls off. And one girl looked at me, she said, I used to be perfectly happy with Missouri till I met you. She later moved. She's now living in Idaho.
Oh, wow.
And anyway, it's just that kind of stuff. So
yeah. Well, my next question was going to be, does it work? What are the results? But I think you going to Washington and going on these hikes with the children of the people that you mentored is proof that it works.
Yeah. It works.
Yeah.
And I'm known up here in Alaska. I do the Chilkat. I'll do all kinds. We're going to do the Chilkat again this year because they closed it for COVID. But there's just, I don't know. It's just impactful. You build relationships that last over this identity, not just a passing thing, but when you really impact somebody in their character or something, it lasts forever, and they'll remember it. And here's the thing about junior hires. I've taken them on so many hikes, but one hike in the Cascades, it rained. Not 7 out of 9 days we were out there. It was horrible. We were high, and it was cold. But I would never quit, because I wanted them to get that fulfillment out of finishing a job or task.
Yeah.
And so I would never quit because the weather's bad. If you ask them right after that, okay, take 2 columns. The first column lists what you didn't like about this hike. And the second column is the thing you did like. Right after the hike, the things they didn't like would be a mile wide, a mile long. The things they liked would be, 2 sentences. But you know what? If you ask them that same thing in 6 months, the things they didn't like will become 2 sentences. The things they like will become long.
Of course.
It's called nostalgia.
Of course.
So it always works in our favor. And so I never worry about their crying. I've had kids crying at night, whatever. I never worry about that to complain, because I know by February, January, they're going to be looking forward to the next hike.
Yeah.
And up here, I do a 5-mile beach hike down in Seward, Alaska, and we go out 5 miles and camp. And I take my grandson now, he's 5, and guys take their 5-year-olds. And these kids have a hard time, but you know what? that's in June. And now, right now, all those kids are excited about going back to Seward.
Oh, good.
This June.
Good.
It's impactful, man. And I enjoy doing that, you know.
Yeah.
And let me give you a little bit of development stuff on this, because why is it that some people can approach risk, and we're talking about risk a lot of times here, but why is it that some people can approach risk as a certain excitement and let's do it, and then some people will approach that same risk in fear and flee from it?
Well, from what I read in your book, I think I know the answer. You describe when you were guiding people in Alaska, and they come from places like Missouri or Oklahoma or Arkansas, and they will describe their surroundings in Alaska by saying, well, this is kind of like what we have in Missouri, and this is similar to Arkansas. Oh, this looks like this one spot in Oklahoma. And it's because people rely on their past experiences because they know those experiences to be a fact, whereas we don't know what the future holds. We can make plans, but the past actually happened, and that is what people revert to. So back to your question about risk, it could be based on past experiences.
Yeah. Well, you're gonna try to make yourself comfortable in risk,
Mm-hmm.
and often the only time you can do that is your previous history.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, like I said, you'll come out to the bush in Alaska, people will, and they're trying to make sense of all this new stuff by the only thing they know, which is Missouri, and so they'll probably bring that up. Well, that's not sufficient. That's not going to be, you know, you don't have grizzly bears in Missouri, or you don't have the climate, whatever, but that is what they're going to learn to deal with. And the thing is about risk and response, it's a neurological thing that is very crucial, that you can build up people's ability to handle risk by putting them in risk and helping them through it. And you build, actually the neurons, the neurological channels get built up much like your muscles do with exercise. So if you exercise, you're going to build up your muscle. The same thing goes with your neurological system. And that's why the first time Daniel was in combat, he was totally freaked, scared. Mm-hmm. But he grew used to it. And the reason that was the danger was still there. That didn't diminish. The danger, you know, this is soldier stuff. It's not just him, but the danger has never stopped. It's still just as dangerous as it was in the beginning. But he has built up the ability to handle that risk neurologically without resorting to fleeing. And so the more that we can take these young people out, or old people, but the more you expose them to risk, and the more they accomplish it, the more they build up the ability to handle more risk neurologically, without clicking into a flight mode. Yeah. You know, a panic mode. It's more of the same approach you would use as a skiing down a steep mountain, a thrill mode. And the risk can be there, but you still approach it that way, where some people would just flee from it. And the way you change that in a person is you get them to get into risk and start to develop those channels in their neurological system to click into challenge mode instead of flee mode. Yeah. And anyway, it's kind of interesting. I found that very useful when I deal with people in risk and stuff, and pretty soon they're looking at things that they used to be afraid of as normal. Right. And, well, we all do that.
After you immerse yourself in uncomfortable situations long enough and often enough, while they're still uncomfortable, I think the threshold for dealing with them increases.
Yeah.
That's why I don't like that phrase, get comfortable being uncomfortable, because I think that our bodies are meant to tell us when we should leave a situation, and we should never try and change that instinctual mechanism. But we should just learn how to increase the threshold of being in that place.
Well, that's called wisdom.
Yes.
That's called, you have gained enough experience to make the right judgments about an experience or a situation. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so it's called wisdom as we gain experience and we gain the knowledge and the experience and the trials and errors and all that. We put all those things together and we should be able to make the right judgment calls about stuff. And, and definitely you want wisdom you're in these mountains for sure.
Yeah. There's a chapter in your book about, well, there's a few chapters about Nepal, but there's one specifically when you took a flight to Nepal in 2015 and you were about to land. The pilot came on and announced that you were going to turn around and go back to Thailand, I think, because there had just been an earthquake in Nepal. That turned out to be a devastating earthquake. Can you talk about the rescue effort that ensued and the decision to go back to Nepal from Thailand when you could have stayed there?
Yeah, that was, you gotta understand, I've got a lot of friends in Nepal, lived there, go back every year for 40 years, whatever, 30 years. And so to me, it's a very, very personal place. And that earthquake, as we were descending into Kathmandu, they pulled up, went back, and sure enough, there's that earthquake. 10,000 people died.
Yeah.
Right then, and those cities aren't safe. Kathmandu's not safe. The brick buildings, they fall in on you, whatever. That's how Asian cities are. And so it's not a good place to be. But when we were in Thailand, then they didn't know if they'd fly back the next day or not. And I had, 5 young guys with me, and I said, well, listen, let's see what they say. Well, sure enough, they're going to go back in. They could open up the airport so the plane could go back the next day. And so I said, you guys, I could spend a month in Thailand. I've been here north, south. I know the place like anything. And said, but I just want to go back to Nepal because I think Nepal needs us more. And I'm not sure what we can do. I mean, you're not going to go digging rubble out and all that. I didn't know, but I said, listen, I want to go back. And so what do you guys want to do? And they all wanted to go back with me. So I said, well, I can't guarantee anything, but we'll go back. And all I could say was, we're in transit lounge now, so grab as much water as you can, because I don't know what the water situation would be like in Kathmandu. So we did. And on that Thai flight from Bangkok, there's 400 some people, usually that's full of tourists. And on that Thai flight, we were the only Badeshis, or the only tourists on that flight. Everybody else stayed in Thailand, which is, they're smart probably for them. Anyway, we took off, we landed, and sure enough, everybody's in the airport camping out. They didn't want to stay in buildings, and they missed their flight, so everybody's out there. And, right away we ended up getting to my Nepali friends, and they're leaders of churches there and whatnot. And so we pooled all our money, and we were able to pool thousands of dollars between us, and started buying rice and tents right away, so we could buy some rice and tarps for tents, because people didn't have shelter and they didn't have food. And so we pooled the thousands and bought all this rice and all these tarps and started through the church there, the Nepali people, and they started handing it out to these people that needed it.
Wow.
And then I got on the internet, and 30 years of taking trips, I said, hey, everybody, this is what's happening. If you want to give, send it to this church in Wasilla who will give it to me, and I guarantee you every dollar it comes in will be going out. There's no administration cost, nothing. And man, we were able to raise about 15,000, 20,000, and just funneled it into rice and tents and stuff for people. And that was before USA or before Red Cross, before anybody did anything. We were doing that stuff, these guys. Mm-hmm. Now, I had one parent that was pretty mad at me for taking the kids back. I said, well, whatever, it's just what it is. And you send your kids with me. And the kid wanted to go. And mom was mad at me, really mad. And, on the way back, make a long story short, it was a mess. Incredible what these guys did, how we were able to bless these Nepalis with rice and food and tents. And on the way back, we're in Bangkok, and this kid's from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. On the way back, in the hotel in Bangkok, the Lancaster News, whatever it was, news source it was live Skyping this kid and trying to get his take on what happened and what they did. And he gave him all the info live on this news in Lancaster. And the mom said, yeah, that's my kid. He's so brave, who was ready to kill me, by the way. But it worked out well.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going back to Nepal in April. I'm taking one of those kids' sister with me, who now wants to
go.
And
wow.
He was on that trip, and so she wants to go with me, and going back in April to do trek and stuff.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, that was pretty incredible experience. And well, you're in the military. Like my son, Marines. You run to the problems. You don't run from it. And that's kind of how I am. And I just knew we could help, and
Hmm.
I just knew we wouldn't be a help in Thailand. It's just
No.
that's my ethos. This is what I am, and those kids learn something though. They've never forgotten. Oh, those young guys.
Hmm.
And,
That was a devastating time
yeah.
for everyone in the country.
Oh, horrible,
Hmm.
horrible time. I mean, 10,000 people, and I mean, I can't tell you what happened. I met a granddad that was outside his rubble of his house, and he lost his grandkids and his wife, and he lost everybody in that rubble. And they're all in there. And to make matters worse, the guy was blind.
Mm.
And I'm out there talking, the police are there, Nepali police, and so I said, you wait here. And I went back, and I got him a tent, and I got him rice, and I tried to set him up with the people that he was taking care of, and they set up the tent, he could stay. I mean, it was as any earthquake is or disasters.
Yeah, I've been in a couple. Yeah.
It's sad,
Hmm.
But anyway, we were there and we were able to do that stuff. And
Yeah. I remember the first earthquake I was in. It was a shock. And I went to work a couple days later, and I was talking to one of my colleagues' kids and just asking her, how are you after the earthquake and everything? And she said, oh, well, we deal with these earthquakes all the time here. And it was my first one. It must have been her 20th or something. I said, well,
sure.
where's the safest place to be during an earthquake? And she goes, oh, an airplane. It's like,
Yeah.
she's right. It is.
Well, I'll tell you what, though. We lived in Missouri 5 years. I saw a tornado come down, and I have never been so amazed at the damage they did.
Oh, those are incredible, aren't they?
Oh, I saw houses just taken off the
Yeah.
foundations and not far from where we lived, and I could not. And cars lifted up. And anyway, these disasters are just, boy, I tell you, talk about being out of control, out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, well, especially when the infrastructure is so poor. I mean, no one's safe during an earthquake, but, much less there. Can you tell our listeners about trekking through Nepal? So we know that you did a lot of missionary work there, and you and your family helped out a lot of people wherever you went. Can you talk about the treks that you did? Did you do them with your family?
No, my wife, you kidding? She'd kill me, man. After living in the village, 4-day walk out, she's not about to go on treks. And no, I take young people to do trips. And so what I did was I wanted to do the whole, they call it the Great Himalaya Trail. It goes from the east of Nepal to the west, about 1,000 miles through the Himalayas, and I wanted to do that. So it took me 6 years, and I started. And you'd have to do it in sections because you either run into monsoons in the summer or winter, and snows, whatever. So you have to do it in kind of different seasons. But I started doing that, and of course, it helps me because I know the language, so I can get by and not get lost. And because this isn't a regular trail as we think of trails.
Okay.
This is a bunch of interconnected village trails kind of stuff, and you got to be able to make sure you're going the right place because you could disappear, lost. You've seen that film Lost in Tibet. Well, you could get lost in Nepal pretty
Wow.
easy. And but anyway, doing that was really enjoyable. So I take different teams every year and do sections of it, and I really enjoyed it. I see a lot of people. I mean, when we lived there so long ago, 30 years ago, it was so different, so remote
Sure.
where we lived, and the people were so different. And nowadays, it's quite developed. Now you can actually take a Jeep out to the village we lived in.
Really?
That was a 4-day walk. Now you can take a Jeep out. And but back then, man, like I said, the ladies didn't even have mirrors, But anyway, doing that trek, it would relive that because I'd come into places that had never seen Westerners before. I'd come bopping in. It was me and a Nepali buddy that would do it, and then the group I'd bring, whoever that was. But, they were amazed because here we come stumbling out of the mountains, and they'd never seen Westerners come in, let alone Westerners could live and eat what they eat and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know, it was pretty neat time. I mean, I finally finished it, and then I'm really glad I did it. I've had some of the groups I've had have had some that's my weak link. Let's put it that way: is the groups I bring. If there's going to be a problem, it's going to be with somebody, because you can't control the sickness. You can't, you can get sick in Nepal pretty quick if you're not careful, and you don't want to be sick out there. Because one guy we were back in there about 6 days, and I said he did a mistake. He jumped over a creek, and he tore his meniscus, so his kneecap was up next to his Adam's apple, And oh man, you talk about bad. Well, I give him 4 choices. I say, here's your 4 choices. There's no 911 out here, so you can stay in the village till you get better, which I used to have to do sometimes if my feet were blistered up too bad. But you can't do that with a meniscus. I said, or you can pay $10,000 for a Nepali Army helicopter, but that's not group funds. Or I can just shoot you right here and we'll say a good service for you back home. Or you can hobble out. What do you want to do? Well, they always pick the force. I just tell these guys up front, listen, I do a lot of planning, a lot of stuff. I'm not going to drive 28 hours in a bus or Jeep to get to the far east of Nepal to start walking west. And I'm not going to do all that. And then you get an owie and then have to quit. I said, you're going to be on your own.
Can you tell listeners a little bit about the guiding that you do in Alaska and the trail that you made?
Yeah, I've got a bush cabin, which means out in the wilderness, and it's we have a 6-mile trail out to it that we handmade through the brush, and so I guide people out there. I use Airbnb actually as a platform to advertise that, and so I get people from all over the world. I had a crazy amount of people out there that are different, and so I take them out. One day we finally get out to the cabin, and then the next day we'll hike up into the high country where the caribou are and all that. Because the cabin almost hits a tree line, which tree line in Alaska is about 2,000 feet. So once you get up in the high country, up in the hills, because we're just east of Denali.
Okay.
The mountain, northeast of Denali. So we're in the Alaska range.
You are in Talkeetna, correct? Yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking out at the mountain right now. It's getting cloudy. Yeah. Look at Denali every day.
That's amazing.
So I take people out there, and we go up that next day, and next day we go out. Well, it's always fun, I mean, for most, let's put it that way, I've had some people that, they want to hike. I tell people it's not a hiking trip, and I'm not your Princess Cruise. I could give a rip about food stuff, and, you're going to eat beans and canned stuff. And if you want the 5-star cruise, you got to do it. Don't come here. But you know what? Everybody really loves it. It's a good experience. Mm-hmm. I've got T-shirts, by the way, made that says "I survived a hike with Mike," and I give to all the kids that survived.
I survived a hike with Mike. Did you set out to be the 8th father and son team to do all the high points, or did that just happen to be?
No, you know what? We really didn't. It was just something that I just wanted to do with Daniel, because I'm really big into getting dads or moms, whatever, to do a special project with each kid, And with Daniel climbing or whatever, I just started doing high points. And so we started out that. And then we joined the high point. Once I started doing that, I knew there was a Highpointers Club, so I joined it. And then started to get their magazine and all that.
Can you tell our listeners what the benefits are of high pointing that you and your son have gotten? Well,
benefits are, to me, number one, the bond that you create with the person you high point with. It's something that Daniel, he goes to work. Daniel works down in Anchorage with the Alaska Pipeline guys, North Slope people. And he goes in there, and he told them that he did all the high points. They're just amazed, because to actually do some accomplishment like that is really, really important for young people, for him. And it becomes more so the older he gets. And I'm sure he'll do it with his kids too, or something like that with his kids. But no, it's a logistical nightmare trying to do all the high points. It would be hard to read.
Yeah.
There's other things you can do. But the other thing is it really builds a lot of character, perseverance. And I think perseverance is so crucial for life, period. And it teaches a young kid to persevere to the top and accomplish things. And that perseverance becomes part of the character that goes through helps you even through the Marines or through whatever you're doing in life, or for him anyway. And I think you can never minimize the importance of finishing projects like that, finishing a peak, a summit, to the end, to the top and down, because it just teaches you that the process is crucial, and getting to the top is important, but really it's the process. It's the camping, it's the campfires, it's the group stuff, and then you get to the top and that's it, but then you come back down, and it's the process that becomes so crucial in the high pointing, I think. Yeah, you can bag peaks, but bagging peaks, that can be part of it. But to me, it's more than that. It's what you learn in the process, the character development,